As I said, the purpose of these sessions are to cover all the essential topics relevant to starting a business. So we've engaged with the local business community, who will supply us with a different business expert every month to facilitate these sessions. But before I introduce our guest speaker, we will be observing a 2-minute silence at 11 a.m. to pause and pay our respects to the armed forces community, both past and present. So I'll let you know when we'll be doing that. So without further ado, our guest speaker today is Chris Morledge. He's Managing Director of Copper Bay Digital. They are a digital marketing and development team with offices in Swansea, High Wycombe and Mansfield. They are experts in designing and building websites, mobile apps and bespoke web apps. They also provide internet marketing and graphic design services. So great to have Chris on board. You will have the opportunity to ask any questions to Chris at the end of his presentation, or you can write your questions in the chat and he will go through them at the end. The chat, if you don't know, is the speech bubble at the top of the screen. I'd also politely ask you to mute your microphone to avoid any background noise, which could distract the group while Chris is delivering his presentation. So Chris, over to you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So again, thanks everyone. So as I mentioned, I'm running Copper Bay Digital, and hopefully today the aim is to kind of sounds like you're all in some different parts of the journey, and just to give you an overview of kind of what website can be, sort of the whys and the hows, and then also how to make a success of a website you may already have. So without further ado, I'll get going. As it says here, obviously Chris Morledge, I've been in digital for 20 odd years, built many sort of websites and marketing campaigns. But I always like to say it's not just myself that kind of do this. I have a full team, and that kind of ultimately our aim is to make a success of any sort of digital sort of platform that we're working with our customers with. So one sort of question always I think is worth starting off is, especially in recent years, is why have a website? And I think the question has become more important recently because of the likes of social media and mobile apps. Is investing a lot of money in a website actually the right thing to do? And in some cases, the answer may be no. The answer may be actually your audience may be elsewhere, or your budget may be restricted to that, which we'll talk about later. But it's definitely worth considering. Is launching a website the first thing you need to do as a business, or actually are there other avenues you might want to take? So some of the sort of benefits of having a website is compared to sort of some of the external sort of platforms you can directly link into. So you own the full experience. So if you have a mobile app, you're under the controls of Apple and Google and Microsoft in their sort of app world. And they take percentage fees of transactions. You have to stick by their rules. Sort of you don't own that full experience. So having a website allows you to kind of own that full experience. It does, and there's less rules and restrictions around what you can do in that platform. So having your own website is a great start, just to own everything regards to you and your business. It is. Don't get me wrong, I think launching apps is a great thing to do, but you just need to be aware that you get a lot more freedom in running your own site. And it can be found easier. So obviously everyone knows of Google, Bing, and lots of search engines. Kind of the web is built so you can make it easy to find websites. So there's hundreds of millions of websites out there. But actually, it's amazing how quickly you can find something if you're looking for when you're looking for it. So to find a website is much easier using it isn't much than the likes of app stores or anything like that. And also you can support that with really strong digital marketing campaigns, email campaigns, pay-per-click campaigns, and just search engine optimization. There's lots of ways of driving traffic to your website that you don't necessarily always get in different platforms. It's cheaper, and it is, in short, it's usually cheaper to launch a website than it is to launch on another sort of platform like a mobile app. So again, generally it's cheaper. It is, but usually it's cheaper, and it's faster to kind of iterate and launch. It is, because you're not having to go through the approval process of like app stores. You can make a change and it can be live within seconds. It can be, so it can be faster to iterate on a website as well. And you can still have some of that functionality of an app. You can. So you can tap into the camera, you can go have an offline capability. There's lots of functionality that you can, because sorry, I jumped ahead a bit. So greater reach, I guess, is one thing I wanted to mention. Was your website, anything that's got a browser, you can view a website on. So as soon as you launch a website, it can be viewed on mobile phones, tablets, computers, even games console, and TVs have web browsers nowadays. Not that many people browse on those sort of devices, but your website suddenly have a massive amount of reach by compared to, again, launching on individual platforms. And so, as I was saying earlier, your app functionality, sort of progressive web apps, you can access the mobile phone application, so you can access the cameras, you can access offline capabilities. So even though it's a website, you can still actually have some of the benefits of apps. So having a website can be a great, compared to launching straight into an app, depending on your type of business, can have a lot of benefits over the sort of working in an app store. But I still, even though obviously we generate sort of websites, actually not for every business, launching straight into a website isn't always the best thing to do. It's kind of the key thing here is you do not need a website to earn your first sort of bit of revenue. You don't. One example here is a company called Donuts. And effectively what they did is they launched a donut company effectively, and they made that from their kitchen at home. They started a Facebook page, they posted, and they used to advertise their donuts and say, oh, I've got 10 boxes and then used to sell them just via PayPal links. And that's how they kind of started their business. Then they started selling on market stalls, and then now they've got 3 shops across 3 different cities. So they first started just by launching on a social media platform and getting engagement through that. And so you don't need a website to launch a business and to start taking money. And I think sometimes people think you need to kind of jump straight in with a full-on website, but actually there are routes to driving revenue for your business, which allow you to at least prove the concept and prove your idea is going to work. So I think it's really important to note that if you've got limited in budget, actually there are other avenues you can start generating business from. I guess a website will help your business grow. So I think at some point every business will get to a point where they do need a website. And that's where you're looking to grow your business. So this is where websites can come into the forefront. And I just want to talk now about a few different types of websites, because there's lots. We've all used lots of different types of websites, and just want to sort of kind of summarize some of that so you can get a feel for maybe the type of site that you might need as a business. So the type of website will depend pretty much on what you want to achieve with that website. And what I mean by that is, if you want you might just need an informational website, but depending on your type of business, these can just be a quick landing page, a logo, contact information. Usually this could be for like a service-based business. It could be just something that you just kind of want to let people know. It's kind of like a digital business card. You're doing a lot of maybe doing a lot of face-to-face networking. You're selling kind of to people. You've already got your contacts. So this is more just a landing page to show you exist. It's very common that people will Google the business. Kind of, if you give someone a business card or give someone your business name, they might do a quick search online just to see if you exist. And that's usually what those websites sort of cater for. The next one is around lead generation. Now this is kind of an improved version of that, where actually you're using your website actually as a proper sales tool, as part of your marketing channel, to say, right, okay, I want to drive traffic. I'm going to have it high converting. I'm going to put good content marketing, rich media, put blogs on there. I'm really going to sort of use my website as a tool to drive leads and grow my business through that. So that's kind of a hyped up version of those informational websites. It's kind of taking that to the next level and really focusing on that customer journey and conversions. And then we have kind of transactional style websites, such as e-commerce and marketplaces and booking engines. Maybe you run classes and you're selling and you want people to book on that class, or you're selling a particular product online. So you have transactional focused websites. You do. And again, they're kind of more hyped up versions of, instead of generating leads, you're generating sales. You are, and some of those websites can be some of the funner ones to work on, in the sense of you can really track, and from a marketer's point of view, you can track how successful your efforts are being. There are hundreds of different types of websites, so this isn't an exhaustive list. but I just wanted to show you the types of sites that I think businesses might want to consider they need to launch with. And one thing I just wanted to add to this as well was across all of these sites, you can have portals and customer areas. I'm kind of taking that out of this kind of conversation today because that's more of a business management tools. It is, but a lot of websites will use, a lot of companies will use their website actually to help engage their customers in their ordering process and their customer lifecycle management sort of process they do. But that's kind of an add-on to any of these websites. So how do you choose the type of site that you need? And they can be affected by sort of three main areas. The type of business you are, so if you're a service business versus a product business. If you're a product, you're most likely going to need some sort of e-commerce transactional functionality. If you're a service business, you might focus on the informational or the lead gen style website. Budget, if you have £300, £3,000, £30,000, each one of those will dictate kind of what sort of avenue you can take and what sort of size of site you can build. So yeah, your budget will massively affect what type of site you need or you can deliver, and time frame. So if this is something you really need quickly because you want to get out there networking, then you're probably going to just launch a very quick informational site with logos, address, bits of information about your business. If this is something you want to launch a new product, or you're launching a new online marketplace, you know it's going to take a bit more time, a bit more investigation, and so you've got time to actually invest and put more and build out that site. So they're the sort of three key areas you need to consider, I think, when you're choosing what type of site you need sort of today, and especially in regards to how quickly you need it. I also want to the next phase I wanted to talk about, just to sort of introduce you to what a website is. I think we obviously work on websites all day long, and so we assume everyone kind of fully understands the whole process. But I just want to sort of really introduce you to a lot of terms that you may start sort of coming across when you start investigating building your own website. So really basic, kind of what is a website? I guess it's a set of files that sit on a server and that's delivered over the internet into your web browser effectively. So, and what you're paying for whenever you get a website built is someone to put together those sets of files. Whether you're using a platform that you sign up online, the system's generating those files for you, or whether you're paying a developer or an agency like ourselves, we're creating those files for you that sit on the server. And then that gets delivered over the internet to your customer. That's kind of the architecture, the structure of what a website is, and that's effectively what you're paying for, is those files to be built and constructed and done in a good way, obviously, and then it's the design being converted into those into that code. And you may hear different technology options out there. So you may hear about PHP, Microsoft.NET, sort of Joomla and WordPress, and there's all these terms that you'll get. And I guess in short, I always especially if you're early business, it doesn't really matter too much. I think if there's any sort of technical people on this call, they might sort of disagree with that, and there's a lot of there can be passionate sort of arguments about technology choices. But ultimately, what you need is a website that's delivered for your customers. You do, and unless you have a more sophisticated setup, which large businesses might have, then actually just getting your website live and being comfortable with the tooling, which I'll talk about in a second, is actually the main focus. But I would say that it's definitely worth asking the question of what actually just understand, so you know, in case you ever need to change agency, in case you ever need to find another developer, whatever reason. It's always good to know, at least, is it built in PHP, is it built in WordPress, Microsoft.NET technologies, Umbraco is another CMS. There's lots of technologies out there. It's just good. It's good to understand and ask. So at least you've got it written down somewhere in case you ever need some support externally. Next phrase you'll always hear is around a content management system. So Steve, obviously, it sounds like you're going to be going on a meeting with your developers soon, and they're probably going to run you through the content management system, how to manage your own site, how to look after it and add products and change the content. And that's kind of what the aim of that content management system will be. And this is where you'll spend most of it. Once you've got your site live from developer, from whoever built it for you, or if you built it yourself, this is where you'll spend most of your time in. Maybe having some awareness of that, of what maybe a little demo of that. If you're choosing providers, have a little demo of the content management system first, just to see if you feel like it's something you might be able to get your head around. And definitely, if an agency is building it for you, they should be providing training. So yeah, the content management system is very important long term. It is. Again, it doesn't necessarily matter technology wise which one you choose. It's more one you personally feel like you're going to get on with. WordPress is an extremely popular one. Millions and millions of sites are built in that, but there are many out there that are very popular as well, maybe just not to that level. So one thing I wanted to mention as well was around website builders. So there are tools out there and platforms. So Wix is a very popular example, and WordPress.com. There are tools out there where you can just go today yourself and don't need anyone else, and you can sign up for a website. You can pull down, you can use one of their off-the-shelf themes, and you can just start editing content sort of straight away and launch your website. And these are great choices for sort of small businesses that are literally just getting off the ground, and you don't have a huge amount of budget to invest in a custom design and custom development. So I recommend this to people when they come to us sometimes who don't have the budget. But then some of the downsides is it's just having that capability and technical understanding of being able to sort of make sure you're using building a site in an effective way which has, if you're looking for something that's high converting, you need someone that understands the design and user experience to make sure it's high converting. But if you're looking for something that's really quick informational site, then you can easily use one of these platforms and deliver a website quite quickly with just quick logo, quick description, quick address, contact form, and even a news and blog sort of sections. You can usually launch those quite quickly, but you will be using an off-the-shelf template, which as you get more sophisticated as a business, you probably want to stay away from. I also wanted to talk about kind of e-commerce platforms, and one of the most popular ones out there is Shopify. So if you've got an e-commerce product, you're looking to sell physical products online, or digital products even, Shopify is just a great route to launch a website. It's relatively cheap. It can get expensive as you get more successful. It can get more expensive, but it's almost a nice problem to have when you're first starting up. So Shopify is a very quick way to launch a website. It is, and so I'll definitely again, people come to us. We build custom e-commerce websites for people. I'll explain more about that later, but there are some customers we will direct and say, look, actually, because depending where you are with your current business, what you're looking for, probably Shopify is maybe a quicker route for you to prove the concept of the business, and then you can start looking at actually higher converting style e-commerce sites that may take down a custom route. And as I mentioned a few times already, there's that another term you may sort of come across when you're talking to developers is that custom build. And this, I think this allows you total control of the experience. It does. Using any of the off-the-shelf platforms, any sort of themes that you're downloading, they can be great for speed and getting something up with very little technical knowledge. But actually, if you're looking for a high converting website and really want to take control of the user experience, then I think, because this is where you might want to start considering doing something a little bit more custom. Again, we're working with like a developer directly or working with an agency, because it just gives you that extra level of control, which an extra level of conversions, and ultimately will be more successful. So I just want to talk as well about sort of working with an agency, and kind of maybe some of the reasons why you may go down that route. So here, some of the reasons that kind of people work with is time. People may just don't have the time. They're too busy running their own business. They don't have the time to do all of this themselves. They don't. So they'll come to us and just say, right, I need a website built. I need a marketing managed. I just need someone to look after and support us because I haven't got the time to do it. Budget. So it's much cheaper to outsource to an agency than it is to employ someone full time. It is to manage your website and to run your campaigns and everything. So you end up going down a route of building a team. So lots of businesses, very well established businesses, will still outsource because it's just cheaper to use an external agency than it is to employ a team of people internally to manage the website and manage the marketing. I think actually one of the most important ones is expertise. And so I'm just going to go into that a little bit more. So expertise. So I've used a picture of kind of our team here, I guess what I'm trying to convey is actually everyone in our business is, and everyone in other agencies as well, is their aim is to make a success of the projects they're building, and that our projects are websites and apps and digital marketing campaigns. It's kind of what we do day in, day out. So you're getting an extra level of expertise at someone's full-time job to make sure that that sort of online presence is successful. So yeah, I think that's one of the main reasons to work with agencies. And you'll start, and to go down this route, you'll get your own custom branded design. You'll be able to really make sure that the design and brand of your website really matches your business and what you're aiming to achieve and what you're aiming to convey with your customers. We're also kind of from the beginning is focused on conversion from the initial conversations, from the design process, from the build process, from the digital marketing tracking. Everything will be focused around conversion, because ultimately that's what makes a website successful nowadays. So the unique user experience. We can actually tailor the user experience down to actually what your customers need. You can, down to your products, and that kind of fits in line with building around your business. So we can think about how your suppliers are being, or how you're getting your supplies for your products, potentially how frequently you have your products on sale. You can really build the website around actually how your business operates. You can do so it just gives you that more customized experience. With agencies, they'll have a process around building a website. They've done this plenty of times. They will do so. They will know all the steps, all the pitfalls to get you from sort of 0 to 1, almost, to get you to that first website live. They'll know even down to the launch and the training and everything like that. But I've seen too many times where people kind of almost fail. A website project fails because they just don't understand how to get it to that next level, or they launch it and it's just nowhere near what they expected. So having that process-driven approach, which we do, which obviously agencies will have, will, I think, really help you get it over the line. And obviously sort of aftercare and support. So with an agency, usually it shouldn't be a one-time sort of relationship. We should always be there then to support you going forward. So I've just spent the last few minutes sort of selling agencies and maybe sort of pushing mine a little bit, but I want to also say, kind of to push you the other way, say there are lots of agencies out here. You're spoiled for choice of agencies. You are. So find one that fits you. It doesn't, and one that fits your business and you. So one generally that you can have conversations with them, make sure you can have that good rapport with that person, but also, have they built something in your industry before? If you've worked in education, or are you launching a marketplace? Are you launching e-commerce? Do they have experience of actually not just building, but also making those websites a success? Look for those sort of case studies from the agency. Like I say, you're spoiled for choice of the agencies out there, and a lot of agencies will niche into particular areas which may fit you perfectly. So do your research. Find out what they've done before, and I think there'll be plenty of options out there for you. Obviously, then budget comes into key in there, but obviously, like everything in life, cheaper isn't always better. One question to always ask your agency is check how much they outsource. So most agencies do a level of outsourcing. I think it's something they don't necessarily like to talk about. We do a little bit of outsourcing every now and then on certain sites. We do, but actually that can be a good thing for you, because it keeps the agency's cost down. It keeps so it means keeps your cost down. It also gives a quicker turnover. It does. So again, we probably haven't outsourced anything in the last 6 months, but it's something we will do when needed. But it's usually the smaller sites it is. So we have our team of developers based in South Wales, and we will always use those for most projects. But outsourcing isn't a dirty word, basically. I think people do sometimes worry about that. Obviously, you need to check things like GDPR, making sure they're not sending your data externally, and any good agency will be able to answer those questions very quickly. But it's also worth just checking, just to make sure you understand the relationship that you do, and understand that they have a strong relationship with their outsourcing team. Usually it's a partner. It's not, they don't just go and find someone on Upwork. They should have someone who they partner with. And I've mentioned Upwork there, and there's sites like Upwork and People Per Hour. Again, on the flip side of this, you could go to those types of websites and directly deal with a developer and find an agency via those platforms. You can. And that can be a good choice for some people. But the only thing I would say is those sort of processes take a lot of hand holding. They do. You need to fully understand the process and what you want them to deliver and how you're going to get it done, because they'll rely on you to do a lot of the work if you're outsourcing via some of these Upwork and people per hour platforms. I think that's the difference where if you're using an agency, even if they are outsourcing to a partner that they work with regularly, is they'll also have the expertise to make sure the site is still successful. They're just kind of outsourcing potentially the development work. They are. And another consideration is definitely who owns the IP of your website. It is who, if you decided to change agency, can you take your website with you? Some agencies, if they're building off their own custom platform, that what they do is they kind of just reuse the platform to launch everyone's websites. They'll actually say you don't own your own website and you can't move your website to someone else. That's not how we build things, but that's definitely, I've heard many stories on that. So if you do have a falling out with your agency, then ultimately you need to come back, build a new website from scratch because they own your website. So that's definitely a question worth asking for any agency that you work with. Now I just want to talk about kind of making your website a success. So one of the sort of books I always recommend to people for any sort of marketing, but especially websites, is Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. Steve, you mentioned earlier around how you want to sort of get your site so it's kind of being presenting the information in a very digestible way and some getting your message across. And actually, this is a great book to kind of to show how to do that. What this book talks about is to use storytelling to make the customer the hero of the website, and you're there just to facilitate them and support them. It's not talking about yourself, not talking about your business, not talking about what you offer as directly. It's kind of just talking about how you're supporting them. I'm probably not giving it justice on the detail in the book, but it's a great book to read when you're looking about how to position your website and how to position your marketing message. So I definitely recommend that. If you take one thing from today, definitely go and read that book. And then sort of planning ahead. So before websites, you start building your website. Just again, we've talked about lots of different types of websites and kind of different approaches to websites. But just plan ahead. What are the goals of the website? Is it just to be an informational landing page? Is it to be a lead generation? You want to convert people? Is it to be an e-commerce site? You want to get, obviously you have large order values. Consider the kind of goals of the website. And consider the numbers, like is it the number of visitors, is it the number of engagements, the sales, this lead contact forms. Make sure you consider those at the beginning, because that will drive the whole process from then. Every decision you make then will be around those. So whether you use an agency or if you do it yourself, just write down what are the goals of the website, what am I aiming for it to do, and then that will help you make decisions as you go through the kind of the planning and the building process. And then as you're going through, sort of use those numbers to track and measure. So Google Analytics, most people would have heard of that. Make sure that's installed on your site. Make sure it's set up properly, so you're tracking those things you just planned at the beginning. Make sure they're set up properly, so you're tracking how many conversions you've got, how many visitors you've got, how many sales you have, how the value of those sales. You can use advanced e-commerce and analytics to record how many the value of each sale and which products are most popular. And having all these numbers might feel a bit scary when you start collecting them, but actually it will really give you some insight into how well your business is, what your website is doing for you. So it's just vital, and ultimately, like I say, if you work with an agency, they should be the ones telling you and reminding you to do that. But yeah, make sure you have planned what you think is a success on your website, and then make sure you're tracking those numbers. And sort of optimize your website. Websites aren't static objects. It's not like you're sending a bit of material to a print magazine, and then once it's done, you can't change it. You have the capability to use those numbers and optimize what's happening on your website. Track which are the most popular pages. If you have a really popular page on your website, make sure there's a buy now button on there. You need to consider your visitors as in a very simplistic way to say, right, you just want to make it as easy as possible for them to transact on your website, whether that's a buy now, a contact us, a telephone number. Just make sure it's really clear, because people do just react to what you put in front of them. And then I guess the key things is websites they're not just there just to sit and live without people visiting them. Make sure you're considering how you want to drive traffic to that site. There are many options there, social media, sort of many free options in some ways, social media, sort of LinkedIn, email marketing, if you're doing it yourself. There are many ways of just driving traffic to your website, and the more you need visitors to be able to make your site a success, you do. But then there's also obviously word of mouth, and then there's pay-per-click campaigns as well. So pay-per-click can be a really fast route to getting visitors to your site, especially if you have again, if it's just an informational site, you may not want to invest the marketing spend because it's just there just as a bit of a placeholder. But if you're using it as a lead generation, a transactional website that's generating you revenue, you really want to focus on these elements. And I wanted to just give a quick case study as well on a business that we did. We launched a website 4 months ago. And they start from zero. They had no online presence. This was a new idea that they had. They were in the industry, so effectively it was a business called Forever Puppy. They were breeders themselves, and so they breeded dogs, and they wanted a platform to sell. And there was one massive incumbent in the market, sort of Pets for Homes, and they have thousands of visitors, millions of visitors a week, sort of thing. They do. So it's a really massive business, and you look at it and think, well, they've just got cornered the market, but they saw a gap, and so we built them a custom platform marketplace, and we also ran their digital marketing activities, which included PPC, social media, email campaigns, content writing, and just really sort of delivered all those things I've talked about earlier about kind of make sure the website's not static, but making sure it's always being improved, and we're driving traffic to that site. And we built the customer experience around what they knew their customers wanted. And even down to the point of we actually launched with one experience, we used the data to then change that sign-up process, and actually it doubled the conversion rate without us doing anything else apart from just changing that sign-up process. So again, websites aren't static things. That you look at the data, you analyze it, and you make a change to improve it. And that's one of the great things about having a site. And then with this particular business, in 4 months, we turned them from zero to a 6-figure business. So it it really sort of took off with them. It did, and the reasons for that is because they spotted a gap, like I say, and they weren't afraid to take on that large competitor, but they also invested quite heavily in their marketing. They did. They launched a really sort of a really simplistic site in some ways. It's an advertising site. It is, but the user journey was perfect for their users. But then they really heavily invested in driving traffic to that site. And as a rule of thumb, I would sort of say that 50% of your initial build budget probably should be spent within the first 3 months on digital marketing. So 50% of the initial build sort of budget should be spent in that 3 months. If you're really looking to drive fast traffic, you're really looking to grow that website presence and really make it an effective marketing tool. That's it for me today. That's kind of all the sort of subject areas. Hopefully there's a few questions. Yeah, please feel free to shout up.
Okay, Miranda, you've got a question for Chris.
Yeah, just wondering, Chris, out of interest, what would that sort of level of support cost a client if they're going to have, that's quite a package of support if you're doing everything for them? So
it can, like everything, it always depends, especially when it comes to sort of support like that. So if you're looking for PPC campaigns, the cost of that can vary depending on the site, how much you're investing at. How big the account is effectively, how much you're investing into that. So that can go from anywhere from like £250 a month to £1,200 a month if you're investing a huge amount of ad spend. But usually, sort of most business, especially in that startup phase, you're looking at the lower end of that. If you want development support, so maybe you're looking for continual feature adding and kind of continual optimization of the site, you're looking for developers to do that. Again, it depends on the size of the site and how many hours you estimate you're going to need each month. But we work on a rate of around sort of £65 an hour. Obviously, we discount that if you buy it in bulk. So, and then, email campaigns, again, similar sort of things. You might be talking sort of £300 to £500 a month to manage those email campaigns. Again, depends on how many emails we do. If you're doing one a month, it'd be much cheaper than if you're doing 6 a month. So yeah, it varies on the level of support that the business needs. It does, and ultimately, as well as, I think we would always work with an agency should always work with you to say, okay, what actually do you need in the first, what's your launch campaign? Because that may be different to your ongoing campaign. So so it depends on where you feel. So with that site, we talked about the Forever Puppy, actually for the first few months we didn't do any email marketing, because obviously they're a brand new website, they had no email addresses, so there was no point in charging that. So yeah, it kind of flexes based on where the need is.
And they'd have a monthly sort of contract then, would they retain a? Yes,
yeah, that's the best way to do it. Is in truth, it makes life easier, because then we're not having to quote for every single piece of work, and it just slows the whole process down. Have a monthly retainer, and then it allows the team really just to invest and get involved, knowing that they can keep investing their time and putting work into it.
Okay, fab, thank you.
Helen, you've got a question for Chris?
Yeah, thanks for that. That was really, really interesting. I've got 3 points that almost sort of give me sleepless nights moving on once the website's up and running. And it sort of focuses really, 1 is hosting, 2 is security, and 3 is data. So say we were to go it alone and we were to set up our own WordPress website, it would be an informational site for us, really.
Yep.
Once the site is set up, what happens with hosting? You know, how do we actually choose who to host it? What do we need to be looking out for, really? And then thinking, once the website is up and running, you hear sort of on a weekly basis about the big websites that have actually been hacked and all the data has been sort of taken and that type of thing. As one that's quite small, we'd be working as well as an organisation working with vulnerable young people. We need to be sure that we are, you know, safer than safe, really.
Yeah.
What sort of advice or I don't know, this is not my sort of area of expertise, but it's certainly something that makes me feel quite uncomfortable.
Yeah,
what would you
fully understand? Yeah, exactly. So I think I'm going to probably answer every question. Answer with "it depends," but it depends. Obviously, it depends on the solution you want to launch with. So, for example, we build some WordPress websites. We do, and so custom designs, custom sort of experience, but it's built on WordPress as their content management system. And WordPress have security updates that get updated, usually sort of weekly, fortnightly, monthly. Obviously, as they get found, security update gets released, and new versions of WordPress get released maybe on an annual basis. The key, really, from a security point of view, is because WordPress is one of the most potentially attempted hacked website, because it's so popular. Make sure it's just already updated. So we have routines every week, just updates the website to the latest version it does of WordPress. And that kind of usually protects all of the obvious security holes. And most hacks are usually the obvious holes that people just haven't patched. We've taken on websites from clients before where the website hasn't been updated from a security point of view in like 3 years. They haven't, and obviously the longer you leave it, the harder it is to actually do the update. Rather than doing minor updates, you have to do a massive update, so it gets quite complicated. So if you're using, and then with regards to your hosting, it's just down to then having a provider that can show you that they invest in their security. So we use Amazon Web Services for our hosting. And obviously Amazon becomes with its own just basic level of protection it does. We also then put firewalls in place, and so it's just down to how seriously the agency themselves or the host are providing it. I would definitely look to I'd definitely look to kind of work with your agency to provide the hosting for you, or at least to recommend one, because they'll obviously have experience in all. They've done it 100 times. If you're using a website builder like WordPress.com or Wix, obviously they have their own sort of security and infrastructure in place and security teams, so it's managed there. So there are things that you hear about a lot. Most of the sort of holes are usually where it's a really legacy website and no one's been managing it, so having someone just to keep on top of it. But actually, it's not something. Even though you do hear about it a lot, most sites will never get hacked in that sense, because you're not an important enough target. I have one occasion I've had come across an ethical hacker And again, we took on someone's old website, and because an ethical hacker had kind of found and exposed a hole in their website they had, and then asked for money effectively to say, I found this hole, can you give me a bounty for finding this problem? But it was a very typical problem that just because the website hadn't been updated. So yeah, so it is a concern, and the agency should take it seriously. But as long as you get the basics right, you're 95% there. If you really need an extra level, there are things, there are steps you can take that with people. You call penetration testing on your website. You can pay companies to actually try and attack your website and look for the holes. There are really extra levels you can take, but they can be very expensive, like $1.50 a day if someone just kind of attack your site. They can be. So you'd really need to be real requirements. So we're working with a website, an app at the moment for the NHS, and they've gone through pen testing. They have, because it's for the NHS and obviously it's NHS data, so they need it for their requirement. But most customers won't need that level.
Oh, brilliant. And the risk of sounding a bit thick as well, right? I'm one of the donkeys in terms of the technology. But if we were to have a piece on our website where we would actually, get people to sign up for the newsletter or something like that was coming out, where do those contact details then get held? Do they get held like at the website, or do they then come through into our sort of admin sort of documents and that? Where does that actually sit?
So you would normally send, so you might use a system like MailChimp, for example. There's a few online email platforms where you can collect the email addresses and use it for email marketing. So if you use one of those, then usually you'll just embed that form. Actually, you embed the MailChimp form into your site, or the developer would fire off the APIs to send that email address to them. It would do. If you've got an internal system that you need the data to go into that would be a bit of a custom development to say, okay, we need to collect that data and then push it into your system. That's possible. We've done that plenty of times as well, and developers can do that. Obviously, it depends what the system is and what the capability is on your side, but usually that's possible. So, and if you really wanted the most simplistic option, you can just get it to save in a list inside the CMS itself. But that's, it's a road to nowhere, that is, because it's data in a list that you can't really do much with, and apart from copy and paste it out into other platforms. So usually it's a system like MailChimp or another sort of email platform, or if you really need an internal system, you'd need to speak to the developer of the website to say, how am I going to get it into here, because I really need it in here, and then between you'd work out a solution.
Okay, great, thank you.
Matt, you got a question?
Yeah, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I don't know. I could hear you and see you all perfectly last time, so I don't know. It's a question about the importance of a domain, really, and it's a question sort of in two parts. I've got a business card. I won't tell you who it's for. I was just counting the characters on it. There's 20 characters, excluding the W's and the .co.uk, and there's 3 hyphens on there. I would suggest to you that's not a brilliant domain name. So it's a question in two parts, really. How important is that domain name? And the second part of the question is, back in the day, you had a choice basically of .co.uk or .com. That's a bit of a simplification, but that's broadly it. Now you can have virtually anything. So what's the importance of the domain itself, but also the whatever that comes after that as well?
So the long domain names, keyword rich. It's like keyword rich domain names. People like, if you're a wedding business, you might say wedding hire Swansea or something like that. You might, as your domain name, wedding hyphen hire, and because someone else has already taken that, you do wedding hyphen hire. And then you start really getting into the mix of trying to get the exact domain name for your website, for your exact service. That has much less relevance than it did 10 years ago, 15 years ago, even. It was really important. It gave you a boost in the search engine. People do it for search engine rankings because Google would rank you higher. But that is much less of a thing now. If anything, it looks a bit spammy. And so even ignoring Google, if you read that, if I read that, it just looks a bit spammy. It looks a bit cheap in some ways now. I think it's been a bit cheapened as a process to do that. So I would definitely not recommend going for these really long domain names. The most expensive domain names are one-word domain names. So if you're a wedding company, you can just do wedding.com. Obviously, that's a brilliant domain name because it's really British, brandable, it's really short, it's very memorable. So regards to the actual domain name, I think brand and memorability, and just being able to actually just put that, not being afraid to put that on leaflets and it's taking up the entire width of the leaflet. I think going for something shorter, something more brand focused is the way that most businesses are launching now. And actually there's very, very little benefit of having these keyword rich names now in a real domain. And I guess one of the only benefits is if someone reads it, they kind of know what you do without reading anything else. But even that's kind of how do you sum up your entire business in 2-3 words. So yeah, I'd stay away from it as much as possible, and most of them probably already been taken now anyway, unless you have some real weird sort of combination of characters. And with regards to the .com, .co.uk, and you can, like I say, you can have .digital, you can have .house, you can have most things nowadays, .retail. I think probably the proof is in what you see out and about. I think most people still have a .com and .co.uk. You might have a .co every now and then, but most companies will still use those because it just feels familiar for most people. It does, and it's easier to remember. It is. So I don't think there's nothing wrong with those, and not going to make websites. Your website's not going to suffer from that from a technical point of view. If you have .digital, you can launch a brand on that, you'll be fine. So it's more, I think what's more important is the marketing behind that than it is necessarily the domain. But like I say, proofs in the sort of in the pudding that most people do use .com.uk because it's just because it's familiar. So I'd always recommend those first. But if you really felt you had a strong brand and you really felt you were going to invest in marketing, then there's no reason you can't do .retail, .sales, or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, thanks for that. I've seen some people sort of put .wales, .cymru on there as well.
Yeah.
And I guess sort of that doesn't just give an indication of what they do, but where they're located as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, it's just the memorability of that. People remembering they might remember, if they see it on a sign and driving past it, they might remember the first bit but forget the second bit. Where it's .co.uk, it might be a little bit easier to remember. It might be. So yeah, but like I say, if you've got good branding behind the business, then actually it doesn't really matter at all.
Thanks, Matt. Steve, I'll ask you a question after the 2-minute silence. Quick one, Chris. How do you you were on about Google rankings?
Yeah.
Briefly, how could a sort of startup company get more visibility on that particular search engine?
So if you're a startup, it takes a very long time to, especially in a competitive space. Depends how competitive the space is in regards to the keywords. If you're searching for wedding band or something like that, then obviously there's going to be lots out there that have got those exact same keywords. So the aim really is to niche down and focus on actually the areas you are most important that are really specific to your business. So it can take a long time, but ultimately it just relies on content, making sure you're doing regular blog posts, making sure you do a bit of research and there are things like title tags on a website. Again, if you're building your website yourself, you need to consider this, but you also need to, if you've got an agency, they should be looking at this for you as well. Making sure there's some technical things like title tags, your H1 tags, the kind of main heading of the website. Make sure they're your keywords, blog posts with the right keywords dotted about, internal linking. These are kind of things that are from a technical perspective. So yeah, there's no quick way to do that. Actually, some of the quicker ways to do that from driving free is using like, if you're a local business, using Google My Business. That's a quicker way of launching and getting traffic through search engines. And social media obviously is another way of driving traffic by building campaigns. So, and PPC is obviously the very fastest way, but obviously that costs you advert spend. It does, but you can launch a business from zero. Like I say, 0 to 6 figures just by having a really strong PPC campaign. You can do so. PPC is the fastest route, but obviously the most expensive.
Yeah, and obviously Google is as a search engine, it's by far the most popular. Chris.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah. You'll see in your own stats that probably 80% of your traffic might come from Google, but that's not to discount. You can still get extra traffic from other search engines. So a lot of people, especially maybe potentially in the older generation, might get a new PC but not change any of the defaults. And if you get a Windows PC, the default will be Microsoft Bing as the search engine, and they might just leave that and use it for years. So you can, if you've already saturated if you think you're doing well off Google already, we're working with a customer at the moment. We're now focusing on Bing as one of their pay-per-click campaigns, and it's actually bringing in new customers, not the same customers, because people do leave their defaults set. They do. So yeah, Google's definitely the one to start off with, but don't discount Bing going sort of when you're ready to look in that area.
Oh, thanks, Chris. That's great. Right, Steve, your question for Chris, please.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your time, Chris, and thanks for the nod on the Building a Story brand. So I'll be looking out for that book. Thanks for that, mate. Matt did actually ask my question, but I'll just expand that. I'm looking at .world or .uk. Are there any specific differences in those two endings for that domain, Chris?
Not necessarily. I think there may be a slight cost. The .world will probably cost you more than .uk, I imagine, but you're only talking pounds. You're not talking hundreds of pounds. I've not looked at this. Every domain sort of has a slightly different cost. Like I said, I think it's a similar sort of answer, really. I think it's more about how you are considering marketing that, and making sure that how are people going to remember that domain, and make sure they can see it. So making sure you've got that good marketing campaign behind it, making sure you've got links to the site. I don't see any reason not to go over the .world or .uk, but it's just making sure that it's easily memorable, and it can also help you stand out as a brand. It can, because it does feel a bit different. So there are benefits to take these things. So I think in truth, it's just it's a bit of a personal business. It's a business preference, your personal preference on how you want your business to be sort of seen. It is. So it makes it stand out a little bit, and it will be memorable. Ultimately, the word "world" isn't a complicated word. It's kind of something easily remembered. So yeah, I think it comes down to a bit of personal preference. I don't think there's really many technical reasons you can't use .world.
Yeah, great. Appreciate it, Chris. And then just to ask you, just to get your perspective really on the crypto space, and not exactly cryptocurrency, but because you're in the web design business and web business, do you know anything about the non-fungible transfers and the digital means? Because obviously with our mobile phones these days, we're going away from tapping, typing, and just scanning into barcodes. Have you got any perspective at all on the crypto space in the next sort of like 5 years, and especially just like thinking about the non-fungible transfers like digital art and what sort of like benefits they can get you, or you could give your subscribers or your clients so they get better access to different rooms within your website?
So I guess with regard to the NFTs, I know very little. As I read personally, sort of thing. So I probably wouldn't. You probably know more about that subject than I do. But just about the sound of your question, and help you there. Sorry. And so you mentioned around sort of rooms in the website. What was that question? Sorry.
Yeah, like to my knowledge, it would like, because obviously if you're looking at funneling and you click on a link. So you got my home page, and then you click on, so obviously navigating my customers, because the way I see it, like the website is like a virtual shop. So there's my front door, I walk in, and then to the left there's a room, to the right there's a room. And it was just looking at the NFTs, sort of like that. Their capability to let you into the room on the left or let you into the room on the right, because I'm aware that they've got that capability, and obviously the technology is like they're doing a lot of it in the States. So they're selling digital art, and depending on what sort of like digital art you buy, it can give your clients more rooms within your website, so it can give you better access, which is quite nichey, I guess. But if you don't know that much about NFTs, I was just asking you because Matt stole my original question, and I didn't want to waste this opportunity to ask you something like that. So thank you.
I guess the only thing I would say on, have worked on lots of sites where they have multiple arms of the business, and they kind of have to. They've got people coming to the site, but actually they have very different needs and directions you want to push them in. And so the short answer on that that really is just that sign. It's very clear signposting, so showing that the almost that what the graphic, the image, the text, making sure this is actually this is for them, this is for them. The signposting, and they're solving that person's problem with that message, and so okay, that I identify myself in that message, I'm going to click that one, and then you're kind of signposting them down to the area of your site, which is exactly what you want them to convert, to put them in a place where they can convert. So just generally regards to a site that's serving multiple types of customers and multiple needs, it's just that having that clear signposting, the clear making sure that the message they read, they identify with, and this actually follows on from that story brand concept, is like they're identifying themselves in that message, and so they instantly are drawn to that and can follow that route. It can be quite tricky to have a site that's serving multiple purposes. It can do to get the messaging right without it looking confusing, especially navigation and all of that. But it is possible with the right sort of thought process.
Thanks, Chris. Miranda's got another question for you.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to ask, with regards to what Stephen said there, the .wales or whatever you use, aside from .co.uk or .com, if somebody is searching for that business then they forget obviously what the whatever is,
yeah,
does that affect the search results? Would they still come up in sort of Google and Bing search results or not?
Yes, they should do. Google and Bing are their own kind of their own masters, and you can't they can do what they want with their search engine results. But yes, you should do. Like I say, there should be no reason why .world doesn't appear. I'm sure there are lots of articles on there around kind of using custom domain names and sort of compared to .world.com, so they will appear definitely. There's no technical.
Yeah, I guess it depends on, as you say, all the other keywords in the site and everything else.
Exactly. Just if I had a Mortgage.world, that's going to appear first because that's a very unique word. It's very easily going to appear. If I have Wedding.world, then again, there's going to be lots of Wedding.co.uk websites, Wedding.com websites, and Wedding others that are going to try and push you down the rankings. So yeah. Yes. But technically, if you've got a brandable name, if you're using .world, and people search for the first bit but forget the second bit, then there's no reason it shouldn't appear.
Okay, thanks.
Matt?
Yeah, it's just a question about, I guess, future-proofing your website, really. I understand why certain businesses would want to use Weebly, Squarespace when they're starting out. And like you said, there's good reasons for that. If a business launches, say, a Squarespace site or a Weebly site and then comes to you because that site is no longer fit for purpose, how difficult is it to develop that site into something, or is it a case of starting again from scratch, really, with someone coming to that website and then wanting to develop it into something more than it currently is?
From a technical perspective, definitely you effectively start from scratch because that's their own custom platform. You can't take that code, you can't reuse it. But obviously you have got a wealth of content. You should hopefully have a wealth of content, so you can repurpose all that content into your new site. And in some ways, the content's much more important than the actual infrastructure that it's built on. But yes, if you launch a site in the likes of Squarespace or Wix, then you will need, and you want to then go down a custom route because you really want to take control of that custom party systems and whatever the reason is, then you will the new company will need to start from scratch on the design and the build, but they can repurpose all that content. But actually, usually what happens is, apart from like news articles and blog posts, if you've got that facility, and obviously products if you're in e-commerce, it actually gives you an opportunity to then refocus the message on the website to make sure it's higher converting. So you usually end up just reusing some of the content, but actually changing quite a lot of it. You do. So it's like anything, change is sometimes a great opportunity for improvement. It is. So, but yeah, ultimately you will be starting from scratch from a build perspective. You will.
Great, thanks. I got one quick question, Chris, about upselling on your website. Obviously, the amount of times you go in somewhere and you purchase a product, and then you get the information below then about customers who bought this product have also purchased these other products. Is it relatively easy to add that into your website for your customers? So
if you're using something like Shopify or something like that, then usually the plugins you have to install, if you have to pay the monthly fees for these plugins or whatever. But yes, they're relatively simple, and actually they're an excellent idea. And if there's lots of research, if someone's already in that buying mindset, they might very easily going to buy more. They are, or they felt a great experience, they're going to convert to whatever the next step is. It may just be you actually asking them to sign up to your newsletter. So they've had a great experience, they bought a product, really excited about receiving that product. You then put them into give them the opportunity to sign up to a newsletter. You do. So yes, so at all times you should be looking at that customer journey and considering what actually else can I offer them during the work, depending on where they are in that journey, to get more value out of them and to give them more value. Obviously, this isn't about conning them into anything. This is about showing all the services in the right order to make sure that they're really fully on board with you as a business. But yeah, again, how easy it is to do, it depends on what platform you currently got, where you're currently at. But ultimately, it's a very common thing to do, and it's just about having the right thought process to make sure that it's being done properly.
Great, thanks, Chris. Helen?
Okay, just quickly, bilingual websites. How easy is it to actually sort of mesh that English-Welsh sort of translation onto a website?
It's relatively simple. It's quite common. Especially we build a lot of we've built quite a few bilingual websites we have, and we personally don't write the content, so it's usually sourcing the content and getting someone to write that content. But if you've got that, then no issues. So yeah, then it's not that complicated a process to do. The best thing to do obviously is make sure it's identified at the beginning and built in at the beginning, because to retrofit it, depending on the platform you're using, can be quite complicated. And again, if you are using a third-party platform, that like say Squarespace or whatever, just make sure those features are available at the beginning. But yeah, it shouldn't be a challenge for it. It will cost a little bit more because it's more development work, unfortunately. But it's not a huge challenge that hasn't been overcome plenty of times before.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Steve?
Yeah, it's just expanding on what Helen said earlier on. Actually, it's like it's to do with licensing and data. So is like the website. So for the next 2 years, it's going to be hosted, my website, and it's under the licensing of the company who I've built it with. The data that I'm like garnering, and like website addresses. Is that two different licenses, one for the website license and then one for company's house? And then is that the same as well for music? If you're using music on your website and licensing for that, is it? Do you know anything about those licensing with websites, Chris?
Yeah, so ultimately, any media you're using on the site, whether it's music, whether it's images especially, there's licensing behind all of that. There is, and so you want to make sure whoever's sourced that music, whoever's sourced that media, whether it's an image or video, has got the correct license to use that on a website. Because you can get, I've seen this before, where you'll get emails saying they're demanding £3,000 because you've used one image on your website. You haven't got the rights to use that image, and so 100% you want to make sure every image on your site is the person who sourced it is confident they have a license to use that image, and that goes across all media. Regarding the sort of the IP of the actual build of the website itself, again, that sort of depends on the agency and what function, what platform they built it on, whether it's a custom build, whether that's something they built on top of their own in-house platform. You'll need to speak with them to make sure. The question is, if I was to move to a different agency tomorrow, can my full website come with me, or am I stuck with you? Almost, that's the question. It is. And in regards to any data you collect, so email addresses and things like that, they should, again, they should be yours. They should be going into like the MailChimp. That should be your account. That should be data that you own. It should be. So yeah. So again, no expert on licensing, but especially when it comes to media, I'll definitely make sure you feel confident that where every image was sourced from, because you could get stung for lots of money in the future. And I've seen it happen, definitely.
Great. Good question, Steve. Howell?
Going back to Helen's question about the bilingual website, I just thought I'd mention that there's a free translation service available via the Business Wales website. It'll be limited to so many words, right? But the service is called Hello Blod, HELOBLOD. So if you did want some help and support on with the word content and for the translation, you can get free support from Business Wales on that.
Good point, Carol.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, guys. Well, Chris, really thanks very much for coming in and doing this session today. I think it's the most most interactive Q&A we've ever had on one of our sessions. So so it's been really, really good and very, very informative. And you put in some brilliant tips there for startup businesses, which the attendees today can benefit from, but also the people who watch via our YouTube channel. So once again, Chris, thanks very much for coming in and helping out today.
No worries, no problem. It's been great. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay then, guys, we'll quickly wrap it up then. So we do, as you all know, we do have a Facebook group which is currently up to 46 members. I put the link to join our Facebook group in the chat. So we're not going to be doing a Startup Club Enterprise session next month in December. It's going to be a bit of a fallow month. But we are going to be holding our next session on the 14th of January. And the topic will be leasing your first commercial unit. And this session will be facilitated by Ben Reynolds, founder and director of Urban Foundry. So I'll send out the details at a later date. I'll pass you over quickly to Matt, who's going to tell you a little bit, which is quite apt really, our upcoming session in the Business Support Hour. Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So it's very closely related to this topic, and I think actually, Chris, you mentioned it at some point. So 2 weeks today, on the 25th of November, 10 o'clock, our Business Power Hour will be on Google My Business. So the figure that I saw for Google was that it gets 92 or 93% of search engine traffic in the UK. So when you type in plumber in Mumbles, that little box on the right hand side is Google My Business. So you need to make sure that you're claiming that listing, and not just claiming it, but using it to the best of its capability as well. So Superfast Business Wales are running that session for us 2 weeks today on how you can utilize Google My Business and make sure that it's working for your business. And just whilst we're on Superfast Business Wales, there's a chat a few messages back just highlighting the various support Superfast Business Wales can offer. There's a number of seminars that they run every week. So do have a look at the seminars and sessions that they run on their website as well, because there's some really useful content around digital support through their service as well.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So by all means, join up to that. I put the Eventbrite link in the chat, so please go ahead and register, and we'll send you out the meeting link closer to the time. So I'll also be sending out some feedback forms about today's session, obviously the relevant links, and obviously the invites to our next session. So thanks again, Chris, for facilitating today, and we look forward to seeing you at our next session in January. Have a good Christmas.